Welcome back. All right, Madness Board it is. So with the draft tomorrow, I wanted to take a look today, and I can just leave this as it is for tomorrow. Saturday, when all the draft picks are made, I can make up just erase the names that are on this board now, and just put up who got drafted where by everybody, and then we leave it at that. But I wanted to take a look the day before the draft at how teams have done in the draft. So in black here, we have all of the top 10 picks from 2014 until 2024. But I've also written in red the number pick they have currently. That could change tomorrow at the draft. Maybe they trade. But teams in the top 10, I've got them in red here, like Chicago 2025 number 3, Buffalo 2025 number 9, that kind of thing. And then in blue are draft picks made in the range of 100 and beyond. So where you would consider draft steals. And I did that because at this time of year, we always hear about great draft picks that were made really late. And I'm sure when we get into Saturday and they're doing the draft from round 2 and beyond, there will be plenty of talk about, oh, remember this guy was drafted in the 7th round and this legend was drafted in the 6th round. So don't turn off the TV just yet. But the reality is that we don't see the steals in the draft we used to. Really, scouting has caught up. We don't have like little, nooks and crannies when it comes to leagues and where players are playing that nobody's watching anymore. That's kind of gone away because of those steals. It got eyeballs onto the teams where those players were playing and definitely caused there to be fewer late round steals. But we'll start things off with Anaheim. We'll go from Anaheim through Winnipeg. Anaheim's drafted in the top 10 plenty over the last decade. 2024, they drafted third. Beckett Seneca, who has yet to make his NHL debut, of course. Dealing with injury and everything. We'll see if he ends up coming into camp this year and playing for him. 2023, drafting second, Leo Carlsson. Carlson's going to be a very good player. Drafting 10th the year before that, Pavel Mintyukov. Good defenseman. And Anaheim's done a really good job of building up their defense so far. Then the previous season, Mason McTavish drafted third overall. So drafting in the top 10 is something that they've been doing plenty. They did so in 2020 as well, where they draft Jamie Drysdale at number 6. And 2019, drafting ninth, they got Trevor Zegras, who, of course, has now been traded. So a lot of pieces added to the team. Of course, Drysdale was traded last year as well. And if these prospects don't work out, they're not shy to trade them, as we've seen with Zegras and Drysdale. They do draft 10th this year, so being in the top 10, this might be the final year they're in the top 10 in the draft. We shall see. Looking at steals, 2019, the number 101 pick was Henry Thrun, who's playing, of course, for San Jose. I don't care if they signed with the team that they were drafted by, just the team drafting them, I think qualifies as a steal. 2015, drafting 148th overall, Troy Terry, so one of those rare steals we find in the 100s and plus, and further back. 2014, drafting 205th, Andre Kasha, drafted 205th by Anaheim. Boston, this one's quick. There were no top 10 picks by Boston from 2014 until this year, and this year they draft 7th overall. Then you look at the steals, drafting 111th in 2017, they get Jeremy Swayman. Drafting in 116th spot in 2014, they get Danton Heinen. 2014, Anders Bjork was number 146, so he did play some NHL games. Then we get to Buffalo. Lots of top 10 picks for Buffalo, to the surprise of no one. Matthew Savoy, drafted 9th overall in 2022. Of course, he's been traded to Edmonton. Owen Power was drafted 1st in 2021. Jack Quinn, drafted 8th in 2020. Dylan Cousins, drafted 7th in 2019. Of course, he's been traded. Rasmus Dahlin, drafted 1st in 2018. Casey Mittelstadt, drafted 8th in 2017. 2016, it's Alex Nylander, drafted 8th. 2015, Jack Eichel's drafted 2nd. 2014, Sam Reinhart's drafted 2nd. The good news is both Reinhart and Eichel have won Stanley Cup since then, just not for Buffalo. They have the number 9 pick this year as well. So they just draft in the top 10. It's what Buffalo does. Looking at steals, both of them no longer parts of the organization, but on the board, Brandon Hagel, drafted 159th in 2016. And Victor Olofsson, drafted 181st back in 2014. Calgary, they've got a few top 10 picks over this time period. 2024, of course, last year, Zane Parekh ends up being drafted by the Calgary Flames. In 2016, they drafted 6th. They got Matthew Tkachuk. And in 2014, they drafted 4th and got Sam Bennett. I could say the same thing I did with Buffalo. Bennett and Tkachuk have both won Stanley Cups. Not for Calgary. Then you get into the steals. For 2020, 174th, they draft Rory Cairns, who's been a good scorer with the Wranglers. We'll see if he gets a really good chance with Calgary or not. Then 205th that year, Ilya Solovyev. So Solovyev coming up and playing for them, I think that's a steal considering it's outside the top 200. And in 2019, of course, drafting 214th overall, Dustin Wolf, who fell to that point in the draft because he was not 6 foot plus. So therefore, teams didn't want to draft a short goaltender. 2015 drafting 166th overall, they get Andrew Mangiapane. Carolina, a few top 10 picks for them. Drafting in 2018, they get Andrei Svechnikov at second. 2015, Noah Hanifin went 5th. 2014, Hayden Fleury went 7th. And then looking at steals, 2021, Jackson Blake, drafted 109th overall. Smart draft pick there. 2015, drafting 186th overall, Steven Lorentz, drafted by Carolina. For Chicago, yeah, they've been in the top 10, haven't they? 2024, drafting second, Artyom Levshinov, drafted there. The year before, of course, Connor Bedard, drafted first overall by Chicago. 2022, Kevin Korchinski, drafted 7th overall. In 2019, Kirby Dach is drafted 3rd. And 2018, Adam Boqvist, drafted 8th. This year, Chicago has the number 3 draft pick in the entry draft. Then looking at steals, Ethan Del Mastro in 2021 drafted 105th overall. Could end up being a steal there. Louis Crevier in 2020 was drafted 188th overall. Guy's a beast on the ice. 2018, 120th overall, Philip Kurashev. And by a beast, I just mean huge. But yeah, Kurashev drafted 120th in 2018. Colorado, 4 top 10 draft picks for Colorado over this time period. 2019, they draft Bowen Byram 4th. Cale Makar was drafted 4th in 2017. The expectation was, hey, they could have these guys both, on the ice, both 30 minutes a game, and your defense is pretty solid. But, of course, Byram doesn't stay in Colorado. Tyson Jost was drafted 10th in 2016, and in 2015, Mikko Rantanen drafted 10th overall. Then looking at the steals, Nils Aman drafted 167th in 2020, part of the Canucks organization, of course. 2018 drafted 171st overall, and they got Nikolai Kovalenko, who's now with the Sharks. Then we get to Columbus. They've been in the top 10 sometimes here. 2024, they drafted Caden Lindstrom 4th overall. Lindstrom didn't play during the regular season, so we'll see in training camp whether or not he's able to push his way into a job on the Columbus Blue Jackets. The year before that, Adam Fantilli was 3rd overall. The year prior, the now traded David Jiricek went 6th. Year before that, Kent Johnson went 5th. So in 2021, Johnson went 5th there. 2016, they drafted 3rd overall. They get Pierre-Luc Dubois, who now goes by PL Dubois. And then in 2015, drafting 8th overall, they got Zach Werenski. Pretty good pick with Zach Werenski. Then the steals, I'm giving James Malatesta, who's drafted 133rd overall in 2021, a little bit of a shout out here. I still think, yeah, he should end up being an NHLer. Probably bottom 6, but I think he gets there. 2020, drafting 114th overall, they get Mikhail Putia. And then the previous year, also drafted 114th, Dmitry Voronkov. 2015, drafting 159th overall, they get Vladislav Gavrikov, who is set to hit the market from the LA Kings. Dallas, not a lot of Dallas to mention here. 2017, they drafted 3rd. They got Miro Heiskanen. And that concludes the Dallas portion of the video. Detroit, drafting 9th overall in 2023, Nate Danielson. Drafting 8th overall in 2022, Marco Kasper. In 2021, they drafted 6th and got Simone Edvinsson. Drafting in 2020, 4th overall was Lucas Raymond. In 2019, 6th overall, they got Moritz Seider. 2018, they got Philip Zadina at 6th overall, and in 2017, Michael Rasmussen drafted 9th overall. In terms of steals, 159th overall in 2019, Elmer Soderblom. It's taken him a little while, but I do think Soderblom's starting to carve out a spot on that roster. The Edmonton Oilers, they've drafted in the top 10 a few times as well. 2019, they drafted 8th overall, got Philip Broberg. 2018, drafting 10th overall, Evan Bouchard. So a couple of good defensemen there. One of them now, of course, the St. Louis Blue. 2016, drafting 4th overall, Jesse Puljujarvi. 2015, drafting 1st overall, Connor McDavid. And the year before that, they drafted 3rd overall and got Leon Draisaitl. Then looking at the steal side of things, 2018 drafted 164th overall. This is kind of interesting that I'm writing Michael Kesselring's name on the board as he's getting traded because I wrote this up, of course, last night. Did not do this morning. 2016 drafting 183rd overall, they get Vinny Darnay. 2015 drafting 124th overall, they get Ethan Bear. And 2015 drafted 154th overall, John Marino. All four of those players for the Oilers, defensemen. So it's interesting that we talk about the Oilers' defense and where there might be some issues, and yet they're pretty good at finding defensemen later on in the draft who end up being NHL players. Florida, just a couple of top 10 draft picks. 2017 drafting 10th overall, Owen Tippett, who of course gets traded. 2014 drafted first overall, Aaron Ekblad, who seems to be on the verge of an extension with Florida. And then in the steals category in 2020 drafted 212th overall, Devin Levi. Speaking of steals, he's part of the trade to Buffalo in exchange for Sam Reinhart. 2016 drafting 114th overall, so that's a key number, isn't it? Riley Stillman. And 2015 drafted 102nd overall, Dennis Malgin. Malgin played enough games that I figured, yeah, I'll put his name on the board. Then LA, 2021, they drafted 8th overall, got Brant Clark. 2020, drafting 2nd overall, Quentin Byfield, and in 2019, drafting 5th overall, Alex Turcotte. May surprise some people, they didn't have more top 10 picks than that. Then in the steal category, Mikeys. They like Mikeys. Mikey Anderson at 103rd overall in 2017. 2016, drafted 142nd overall, Mikey Asimont. 2015, drafted 194th overall, Mikey Roy. That's Matt Roy. Then 2014, drafting 210th overall, Jacob Middleton. So a lot of defensemen there too. Maybe defensemen and goaltenders are both a bit of a puzzle because they usually take a little bit longer to develop, right? Then we get to Minnesota. They've drafted in the top 10 once by my count. Any errors on the board, attribute them to the entertainment guy. Totally his fault. But drafting 9th overall in 2020, Marco Rossi from Minnesota. And then in the steals category, in 2016, drafted 106th overall, Brandon Duhaime. 2015, drafted 135th overall, Kirill Kaprizov. And 2014, drafted 109th overall, Capo Kakinen, who I saw in person in Abbotsford for a couple of games playing for Charlotte last week. Montreal, some top 10 draft picks for Montreal, aren't there? 2024, drafted 5th overall, Ivan Demidov. 2023, at 5th overall as well, was David Reinbacher. The year before that, of course, Montreal wins the draft lottery and they draft Juraj Slafkovsky. 2018, drafted 3rd overall, Jesperi Kotkaniemi. 2016, drafted 9th overall, Mikhail Sergachev. And then we get into the steals side of things. Josh Roy, drafted 150th overall in 2021. In 2020, drafted 136th overall, Jacob Dobesh. So, honestly, some good steals here for them. Then 2019, drafted 201st overall, Raphael Harvey Pinard. 2017, drafted 199th overall, goaltender Caden Primo. Drafted in 2016, 160th overall, Michael Pezzetta. Drafted in 2014, 207th overall, Jake Evans. One thing I noticed with the guys who are steals really late in the draft, they're very often bottom 6 players, they're role players. The days of those star players being found late just don't seem to be there anymore. It's one of the things I wanted to look at with this video, and madness ensued. Nashville, no top 10 draft picks since 2014 until this year. They draft 5th overall, and they're pretty confident they're going to get a player who's going to be a Nashville Pred for a long time. Then in the steals category, Juuso Parssinen was a 210th draft pick in 2019. 2015 at 115th. Alex Carrier was drafted there. Also in 2015, drafted 145th overall, Karl Vejmelka. So there's a little bit of a trivia answer for you in terms of who drafted Vejmelka first. Nashville. And again, I don't care if a player played there or signed there. I'm just looking and going, that's some good scouting if you picked a player there. 2014, drafting 112th overall, Victor Arvidsson. We get to New Jersey. They've been in the top 10 a bunch of times, haven't they? 2024, drafted 10th overall, Anton Saleyev. Then 2022, drafting 2nd overall, Shimon Nemitz. In 2021, Luke Hughes went 4th overall. In 2020, Alexander Holtz went 7th overall. 2019, Jack Hughes goes 1st. 2017, Nico Hischier goes 1st. And 2016, Pavel Zacha goes 6th. It's interesting, too, because you got 2 first-round draft picks and a number 2 draft pick here. So they've been number one twice, number two once. And yet New Jersey still has plenty of issues when people talk about this team. And so that doesn't guarantee success down the road. You still have to build that roster around him, New Jersey being a good example. And of course, in the case of Jack Hughes, you got to stay healthy. Then looking at the Steels, 2018 drafting 141st overall, Yegor Sharangovich. 2016 drafting 162nd overall, Jesper Bratt. So that's one of those rare star players being drafted late in the draft, and that's from 9 years ago. The New York Islanders drafted in the top 10 once over that time period. 2014 drafting 5th overall, Michael Del Cole. In the Steals category, Sebastian Aho, not the Carolina Sebastian Aho, the defenseman Sebastian Aho, was drafted 139th overall in 2017. In 2014, drafting 108th overall, they got Devon Taves, who of course is now in Colorado. But the Islanders have the number one draft pick this year, so Schaefer's going to get added to the list. New York Rangers, 4 times they've drafted in the top 10 over this time period. In 2020, they drafted first, got Alexis Lafreniere. The year before that, they drafted second, got Capo Caco. 2018, they drafted ninth, got Vitaly Kravtsov. And 2017, they drafted 7th and got Lias Anderson. So the only one still with the organization is Lafreniere. And there's talk about whether or not Lafreniere is going to get traded at some point. So, yeah, drafting in the top 10 didn't necessarily help them a lot. Then you get into the Steals category. Drafted 159th in 2022, Victor Mancini, who I also saw in Abbotsford. 2020, drafted 134th overall, Brett Berard. And in 2020 as well, drafted 165th overall, Matt Rempe. 2017, drafted 174th overall, Morgan Barron, one of my favorite fourth liners in the NHL. 2014, drafted 118th overall, Igor Shesterkin. I think we're seeing a pattern here that drafting 114, 115, 118, maybe keep an eye on those draft picks. One of them's probably going to be an NHL player. For the Ottawa Senators, yeah, they've been in the top 10 sometimes. 2024, number 7, Carter Yekemchuk. 2021, drafted 10th overall, Tyler Boucher. 2020, they'd had 2 picks in the top 5. Drafted 3rd, Tim Stutzla. Drafted 5th, Jake Sanderson. Both of them excellent players now. 2018, Brady Tkachuk goes 4th overall. Then in the Steals category, in 2019, drafted 105th overall, Mark Kastelik. In 2017, drafted 121st overall, Drake Batherson. And in 2015, Joey Decord goes 199th overall. But as I've said many times, goaltenders, you just never know. Philadelphia's had some top 10 draft picks. They have one this year as well in 2023, drafting 7th, Matvei Michkov, who went to Philly and said, take me, I'll go and play for your team. And he did. 2022, drafted 5th overall, Cutter Gauthier, who of course is now with the Ducks. 2017, I should say, drafting 2nd overall, Nolan Patrick, who injuries derailed his career. 2015, drafted 7th overall, Ivan Provorov, and this year they have the number 6 draft pick. In terms of steals, 2018, drafting 143rd overall, Samuel Ersson, so goaltender for them. 2017, drafting 137th overall, Noah Cates. 2015, drafted 188th overall, Ivan Fedotov, which Philly fans are going to be like, well, is that... he's played in the NHL, and he's drafted 188th overall. 2014, drafted 138th overall, is Oscar Lindblom. So, yeah, Philadelphia, a lot of names on the board. Pittsburgh, they haven't had a top 10 draft pick since 2014. Of course not. Sidney Crosby here and all that. But looking at steals, in 2019, drafted 203rd, Valtteri Puustinen. In 2015, drafted 137th overall, Dominic Simone. There's going to be some names here in this video you haven't heard in a while. 2014, drafted 113th overall, Sam Lafferty. So that's right in that 113 through 110 range. San Jose, they're in the top 10, of course, this year. They've been in the top 10 for a bit now. Last year, drafted 1st overall, Macklin Celebrini, who has really exceeded what the expectations were for him when he was drafted. 2023, drafted 4th overall, Will Smith. 2021, drafted 7th overall, William Eklund. And in 2015, drafted 9th overall, Timo Meier. Of course, they have the number 2 draft pick this year, and it's expected tomorrow that they'll draft Michael Misa. We'll see if that happens. Steals, I had to go back to 2014. Number 171, Kevin Labanc. So, not all teams have been able to find steals, which brings us to Seattle. I'm going to say this. Seattle doesn't have a steal on the board, but considering how short a period of time Seattle's been in the league, it's forgivable. Some of those steals might show up in their team this year. So top 10 draft picks, 2024. So last year, Berkeley Catton went to them at 8. 2022, they draft Shane Wright 4th. And the previous year, their first year at the draft, drafting at number 2, Matty Beniers. This year, they have the number 8 draft choice again. The St. Louis Blues have been in the top 10 once. 2023, they drafted Dalibor Dvorsky at 10. He's expected to be a very good player for them. Steals in 2020, drafting 150th overall, they get Matt Kessel. In 2018, drafting 200th, they get Tyler Tucker. In 2017, drafted 113th. There it is again, 113th. Alexei Toropchenko. 2015, drafting 127th, Nico Mikkola. And 2014, another player I've seen here in Abbotsford, drafted 176th, Sammy Blais. Which brings us to Tampa. No top 10 draft picks since 2014 because, of course not, they've been a contender that whole time, basically. But steals, definitely some steals here. 2018, drafting 183rd overall, Cole Koepke, who's, of course, now with the Boston Bruins. 2017, drafted 169th overall, Nick Perbix, who is exiting the team as an unrestricted free agent. I don't think that plane's landing on my house, but if it does, you've got a great video. 2016, Ross Colton goes 118th overall. He, of course, is now in Colorado. 2015, Matthew Joseph goes 120th in the draft. So Tampa good at getting some steals later on in the draft, which is what you need when you're not getting those top draft picks. Toronto, they've been in the top 10 a few times, not since Austin Matthews was drafted first in 2016. In 2015, they draft Mitch Marner 4th, and in 2014, they drafted William Nylander 8th. Your core is born out of that. Then the steals in 2018, Pontus Holmberg drafted 156th. Dakota Joshua drafted 128th back in 2014. Also drafted in 2014, 188th overall, Pierre Engvall. So, a couple of NHLers after the top 100 for Toronto back in 2014. Not too shabby. Utah, I've included Arizona, so I'm wearing Arizona because I don't get a chance to wear Arizona very often. That may change, right? But anyways, before that happens, so I've included Arizona with Utah. Utah last year drafting 6th overall got THG. The previous year, Arizona drafted 6th overall. They got Dmitry Simashev. In 2022, they drafted 3rd, got Logan Cooley, who's become a very good player. 2021, they drafted 9th overall and got Dylan Guenther. I'm not going to say it. He's an excellent player. I'm just going to leave the rest of that out of there. 2018, I'm a Canucks fan. 2018, drafted 5th overall, Barrett Hayton. 2016, drafted 7th overall, Clayton Keller. And in 2015, drafting 3rd overall, Dylan Strome. Now, Utah has the number 4 draft pick this year. Utah's going to be really tough next year. That's my prediction. Then in steals for Arizona, 2021 drafted 107th overall, Emil Lilleberg. Drafted 123rd in 2015, Connor Garland. 2014 drafted 117th overall, Michael Bunting. So Garland, Bunting, now stars elsewhere. And of course, Lilleberg, that's the Lilleberg that's in Tampa. Then you get to Vancouver. They've drafted in the top 10 sometimes here. 2019, they drafted Vasily Podkolzin at 10th. We are still debating Podkolzin in Vancouver. Podkolzin's a very good, hardworking forward that I'm glad is having success in Edmonton. I don't think he would have had that success in Vancouver. 2018, drafted 7th overall, Quinn Hughes. 2017, drafted 5th overall, Elias Pettersson. 2016, drafted 5th overall, Olli Jokinen. And 2014, Jake Virtanen went 6th. So, mixed bag when it comes to the top 10 draft picks for Vancouver. Only one of them is from Sweden. Then we get to the steals. Artur Shilov's drafted in 2019 at 156th overall. 2015, Adam Gaudet's drafted 149th overall. And 2014, Gustav Forsling drafted 126th overall. Canuck fans liked him a lot. So this is one of those times where I will give Canuck fans tip of the hat. They knew what they had. Now you get to Vegas. Vegas is pretty easy. They've drafted in the top 10 once. 2017, they drafted Cody Glass 6th overall. And in 2018, the steal for them drafted 115th, right in that section. Paul Cotter won 115th that year. Then we get to Washington. Ryan Leonard is drafted 8th overall in 2023. That's their only top 10 draft pick. And in 2016, their steal, Beck Malenstein, 145th overall. And then we get to the Winnipeg Jets. The Winnipeg Jets drafted in the top 10 3 times by my count. So if it's wrong, then that's on the entertainment guy. Really, he's got to start working better. Cole Perfetti goes 10th overall in 2020. Patrick Laine goes 2nd overall in 2016. And at 9th overall in 2014, Nick Ehlers, who may very well, looks like he's going to be hitting the market on July 1st. And then in the steals category, Declan Chisholm in 2018 went 150th overall. And in 2015, drafted 168th, pending unrestricted free agent, Mason Appleton. So in terms of an era where, star players could still be available in the 7th round, those days are kind of behind us, because looking at this board, there are some good players you can get later in the draft. But in general, when you're looking at players 200 and beyond, you're probably looking at guys who are going to be in the AHL, maybe the ECHL, maybe end up playing in Europe. But it does illustrate how important those top draft picks are now that everybody scouts pretty darn well. Scouting in the NHL, I think, is much better than it was, which is why some of the glaring errors that we'll see later on seem to stand out a little bit more than they might have back in the 80s, 90s, and maybe even the early 2000s. But there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. I wanted to put this on the board just to give an impression of which teams were able to get steals later in the draft. I think Tampa Bay stands out as one that they're able to just find draft picks when they need them. And I wanted to restrict it to draft picks 100 and beyond, because there's some very highly thought of prospects who've gone in the 2nd round or even the early 3rd round. And so I don't feel like that's necessarily a steal as much as somebody who's outside the top 100. So thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for watching, for your time, and I will talk to you again soon.